Okay, so I'll just review that again. So as a JPEG, so I just converted it to a JPEG, and you can actually do this in Acrobat. If you just open this up and go save as, you can save as an image or a JPEG, and that's all I did. So then I got this file. Hit open. I'll just drag it over into Rhino, and I want to insert it as a picture frame. And so I just clicked one, and then I'm just giving it the overall scale here. I'm going to replace this. And then I can find the right scale of it by draw a line. Which line should I take? Here to there. There's a few ways you can do this, but I'm just going to show you this way. Then I'm going to draw another line that I want to be perpendicular to that one. All I'm going to do is offset it the distance that that line should actually be. So whatever the dimension is telling me. So I'm going to move it to the end, and then I'm going to go to offset. Type in that distance, which is 241, 2.5 inches. So 241 feet, 2.5 inches. So that's the actual distance. So now I can grab that image, then I'll just go to scale. I'm going to use a 2D scale. So the origin point, I'm going to start here, at the corner where I started before. The scale factor, the first reference point is going to be what it is right now, so the end of this other line. And I want that to scale it down actually to wherever that offset line was. So that'll put it into 1-to-1 scale in the model. And then I can move it relative to the site. And I can erase these lines. So then what you're looking at here are just some simple blocks of space. I'm thinking about the square footage, right? And all I'm using are the simple primitives here, creating a box. Or you can use curves to extrude or what have you. But I was just making simple boxes. Of course, you can come back and scale them in one dimension or the other if you'd like. I can show you how to do that. But just in the basic block form to understand what the masses of space, what they are in terms of their overall volume, and also start thinking about their relationship. So that's why first I want you to think about the party organization, right? How are these organized? How is it relative to the grid that you guys are also working with? How is it, how are these spaces relative to the other? How are you starting to delineate public space and private space, served space and service space in a very preliminary sense? You know, just take a stab at it. It's not going to be absolutely correct the first time you do it. The idea here is to put something together so you can self-critique and think about it later, and also we can talk about it as part of the critique process to help along. So basically that's what I did, this main block here being something like the main gallery presentation space, some idea here, these gray ones for service spaces, some idea for circulation, how it might circulate throughout these spaces. That might set up some interesting conditions about the site. So then what I'd like you to do from this, once you have that established, is you go into the upper left hand pull down here in the viewport to set view, and there are isometric options here. So as opposed to a perspective, we can actually get a paraline isometric drawing. So I can say northeast, I think, yeah, let's try northeast. So now it's a paraline drawing. You can zoom up to that. Then if I go into print, and there's a few ways you might try doing this. I've actually had some success with using the artistic view here, which makes it seem as though someone has drew this. The other thing that I did do too is set up the sun. Let me go through the printing process first, and I'll show you how to quickly set up the sun. Then I'll just go into print. It's set up here for an image file, PNG, TIFF. That's fine to select. Actually, some of the images come out a little bit cleaner if you do that first. It's already set to 11 by 17, so we can see that set up there. I want it to be black and white. The viewport, scale, and output. Right now it's set at 1/8 inch, and so we can see that not everything is included. And I recommend here 3/30 seconds. It's kind of a weird scale, but at 3/30 seconds, everything seems to fit. So that might be more relative to how you're working on the site. You may have to go a little bit smaller, but in general that should fit. And so this is what I'd like you then to print out. So you can adjust the scale there with this pull down. Everything else should be fairly straightforward. I just left this dots per inch at 288. That's a little bit high, but it's fine. It's black and white. Oops, I just scrolled through different views. Okay. And you can get into some of these other options in terms of what's visible and not. If something's not seeming right, you can play around with those. I think the default should be okay. And then you just go hit print and save it as a file, essentially. Should be, there it is. So you hit print and then you can save it as a file. The other thing that you may want to do, I'm not going to save this, is set up the sun. So again, we talked about those sun conditions. Those will be part of the analytical diagrams, but we also can set it up right here in Rhino to get fairly close, at least, to the sun condition. So the way I get to options, any of the options I tend to, would be to right click here over this render bubble, and I'm used to using Flamingo as the renderer, so I know that there's another tool here. So what I do have typically set up in this is to have the skylight on. That gives a nice backlight to everything, and a transparent background, so in case you wanted to bring in another background. But actual setting up the sun is under the render tab. My screen is tiny, so I think it moved off. There it is, render tools. And there's the sun, there's the sun. Okay, so we get this dialog box. And I tried to, there's one option here where you can just ask it to identify where you are right now. That didn't work for me. I actually had to type in the latitude and the longitude. So, and that's information you can find from that website, or you can find in any number of other sources. So you can type that in, and that should get us to Moscow. It's not going to show up. It's not one of these defaults, unfortunately. These are more major cities. But then what you're able to do, and I'll just move this to the side, is change the season. So I can see how that time of day changes over the course of the year. And of course I can also change the time, so I can get morning and evening and so forth. So that's something you can play around as well, as another way to start understanding what's happening along the site, using this as another tool there. And seeing just how those shapes and forms are impacting the quality of light about the site and onto themselves. Okay? I think that's it. Questions? I just recorded what I just did, so I'll go ahead and post that.